The time being 4:30, I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. Before we adopt the agenda, just want to note again that item number 10, discussion action on the payroll tax deferral, is part of the amended agenda. And also item number 9, this is going to be setting the date for the 2021 budget rather than the 2020 budget. But with those changes, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Tom, Fred seconds. Okay. Any other corrections, changes to the agenda? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So I'm gonna do Barrington and O'Connell because Fred, you can't make motions.
Oh,
Oh, okay, good. good.
So we'll do
Thanks.
Barrington and O'Connell.
All right, first item then, Jason, you're up.
Jason, if you want to come up to the microphone, please.
Right.
Oh.
Sorry.
I won't let it
Ladies and
happen.
gentlemen, the utilities is looking for a proposed amendment to chapter 13. And basically all this is refining and making it more efficient for the utilities to endorse their checks. Currently the mayor and the clerk treasurer are countersigned on the checks. And it wasn't apparent to us, it was part of the recodification process that originally this came up. Steve had mentioned it to me several times. It got lost during COVID. And that was when it became apparent to the utilities that we would like to have this authorization. And the reason for that is there was personnel issues and COVID issues. I would send our accountant in to have checks endorsed and there was nobody available in the office, or there was somebody, but they didn't know that they could have authority to stamp the checks. Made it difficult for us to get payroll out. Several times we have checks come up and it's just making the process more efficient for the utility. That's the only reason we're bringing the request up for the amendment. So
Very good. Okay, is there a motion to go ahead with this?
I'll make second. So I move.
John makes the motion, Tom
Yep.
seconds. Okay. Any further discussion, questions? for Jason? All right, if not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Who can stay up here since we're gonna be talking about
Yeah.
the utility refund?
All right, next item on the agenda, we have authorize refinancing of the 2011 utility bond.
The
Okay.
the utility has also been approached to re-bond a 2011 utility bond. That savings over the course of I believe it's 5 years. And Phil is here. He can speak to this better than I can if there's any questions for you guys at all. But this is a savings over $370,000 over the course of the remainder of the bond, and we save about $35,000 to $40,000 a year. So that's basically the purpose of this bond being able to be called.
So Phil, if you just want to go over the highlights of that presentation, maybe interest rate changes
Certainly.
and then just talk a little bit about that.
Certainly. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Phil Costin with Ellers. Nice to be with you today. Mayor, I look forward to meeting you in person and any new council members that were elected. Yesterday, we brought forward to the Utility Commission this possible refinancing. It's the 2011 revenue bonds. And just to kind of set the stage really quick, we're not looking to issue new debt. This is just refinancing old debt. So think, refinancing your home mortgage, same concept, just at a lower interest rate. And to go through that process, there's a number of steps. So we got approval from the Utility Commission yesterday, bringing it to the finance tonight. If you give us approval to move forward, it'll be brought to the full council on September 8th. And then if the resolution is adopted on the 8th, it'll come back on October 13th at your regular meeting for sale results, meaning we'll compile the information, we'll have the winning bidder, we'll have the final rates, we'll have the actual final savings as well. And for those who have been around for a while and know of our work, we certainly have always provided you with what we think is a very fair estimate of what we expect to see from a savings standpoint. But we certainly would hope, and our expectation is that we would do a little bit better than what we're showing right now. In the presentation that we provided on page number 2, are the anticipated rates are listed under coupon. They range from 0.75 to 1.75%. Thank you, Judy. That second page. And the next page shows the actual rates that we would expect to receive. Again, 0.75 to about 1.75. They are fixed when they are sold. They're just sold usually in ascending rates. That's how bonds are sold. If you go to the next page, as Jay indicated, we are looking at a savings on the far right-hand side of about $382,000 over the life of this issue. Again, if you sold today, we think you'd do a little bit better than that. But about 36 to about $40,000 annual savings that would be realized undertaking this issue. The net present value is something that is shown on this page as well. So net PV benefit, you'll see that. What we're showing there is what percent of the bonds are you actually saving by going through this refunding. We'll bring refundings to communities at 2.5%, 3.5%. You're at 12% here, meaning that the savings is quite significant. And that, again, is why we're bringing it to your attention. The reason that we're bringing it now is partly because of the call date. We're seeing a historic lows in the bond market over the last 3 to 4 months. That continues, and we don't expect anything significant to happen over the next month or two. Here we're talking, really about 6 weeks, and hopefully we will see the market hold over that time. We're bringing it also to you because it's callable at this time, meaning you have a 12/1/20 call date when you can prepay, refinance the loan. And as a result of that, we can do it 90 days prior to that. So we're going to close, sell in October, close in November, well within that 90 days. And we meet the call provision, and that's why we can bring this to you at this time. So really, if it pans out, it'll be a great saving to the utility. Again, $35,000 to $40,000 annually to take advantage of rates. The current rates are shown on page number 4 of the attached. And you can see where it says coupon. Those are the current rates, 3.15 up to 4.375 versus the 0.75 to 1.75 that I showed you. That's where the real action is, the difference in the interest rates that we're seeing as a result of this. The savings analysis that we showed and the $382,000 that we're projecting is net of all costs. So that includes any costs related to this refinancing. So that's actual savings that would be realized by the utility. So with that, we've been through refundings with the city in the past. They've typically turned out great. We fully would expect this would be the case as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Phil. So is there a motion to authorize refinancing of the 2011 utility bond?
So
Tom, Mike makes a motion, Tom seconds. Any further questions? Jason or Phil? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, Phil, you're up.
All right, Judy, do you want to set the stage on this one, or do you want me to just take you through the analysis?
Yep, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I would say for the last year plus, we've been engaged to periodically provide updates to the city, looking at a longer range capital financing plan. And so what you have in front of you is just a capital finance plan. It doesn't look at all elements that need to be dealt with at the city level, but these are items that are viewed as being large enough in scale that it would be beneficial to look at financing the project as opposed to attempting to levy the dollars. In all cases, whenever possible, you certainly should try to levy for smaller capital items or items that have a short asset life. We're really focusing here a little more on larger scale projects. So if you go into the first page of this attachment, there's a ton of numbers on these pages. So what I'd like to do is try to kind of highlight a few items. This is your existing debt. This is before you do anything else. Takes into account no new capital borrowing as a result of the analysis that we ran. So this is where you are today. From left to right, really quick, debt payments. Those are your existing obligations that are outstanding. You have a little bit of a premium that I'm not going to get into the detail of that from a previous issue. Your net tax levy divided by your equalized value gives you a rate per thousand for debt. And so that's the third column from the right. And then we break it down usually to a value of a home, kind of a typical home value in a community. We use 130,000. We can modify that to be whatever you will. But you can see that for 19 and 20, you're going to be right around $226 per home, $130,000 home. That's from existing debt that you have outstanding right now. And before you take on any new projects. A little bit of good news, your valuation jumped from 387 million to 406 million. So you did see a nice bump in your total valuation. That's in the middle of the page, and that just recently came out. From that point on, what we're using is just a simple 1% growth. So if you see greater growth, it drops the tax rate because you're spreading out those payments over a larger tax base. So that's your base case. So if you go to the next page, we've been working with staff, and we've pared this back a little bit for this analysis and looked at these capital needs that are out there right now that would have to be financed. And we really just focused for now on 20 and 24. 24 is major downtown road project, and we have it as a placeholder that would need to be done at some point. What we're talking about today is 2,410,000. That number is being modified a little bit. There is, without getting too technical and too geekish, I'll call it, we had some issues with the fundability of a couple of projects with GO bonds. It's a state law, and we're working with your bond counsel, Quarles and Brady, to make sure we can fund what we can fund as part of this. So what you'll see is instead of funding about 2.5 million, we're going to be about 2,350,000. That's not represented here, but it'll just make the numbers look a little bit better. So if we go to the next page, what we've built there then is two different financings. The first takes into account 2020 and 21 capital projects. And we've identified in this analysis $2.5 million. Again, we expect that number will come in a little bit less because one of the projects we could not fund with GO bonds. We also have a placeholder again for that 2024 project, primary street project, to determine kind of what it looks like when you include that larger capital expenditure in a later year. So if you go to the next page, this is what we're projecting again for interest rates. Now, again, I'll state that what we're using is pretty for estimated rate is pretty conservative today. I'm not going to try to predict what it'll be like on October 13th, but again, if you sold today, we would expect the rate to be a little bit lower than what we're showing here. It's a great time to lock into long-term financing just because rates are so low. We're seeing 20-year financings that are under 2%. I've been doing this for 24 years. These rates I've never seen. So it's a good time if you're looking at taking on some capital expenditures to kind of lock into debt for a longer period of time, because again, rates are so low. So that's how we have that's how we have structured this issue. Again, if you look at the total principal and interest, you can see it increases a little bit. And the reason we have it increasing a little bit is we expect growth to occur a little bit as well in the community. And as growth occurs and matches up well with the increase of levy a little bit, increasing as well, and spreading out that tax impacts, we're not getting hit really hard in the early years. So that's the structure that we came up with. You can jump then to, well, if you want to talk about the structure, I'm not going to get into the structure of the 24 bonds. Rather, It's a large project, upwards of $6.1 million. We've assumed a much higher interest rate here because, again, we don't know where rates will be in 24. But that's how we structured that issue. So we brought it all together on the next page. And on the next page where it says on the top, financing plan tax impact, all we're doing is in the kind of bluish gray on the left, that is your existing that I went through to start with. That is your base case. Before you do anything else, that's where you're at. Then I build in kind of the orange columns, the 2020 issue at 2.5 million, which again will be a little bit lower when you get the final authorization later this week. And then the 24 issue, which is a large road project, and I've structured that over each one over 20 years. And we haven't fooled around a great deal with the structure of it. There's a little bit of what we call back end loading, again, where we're paying a little more principal in the later years to kind of help alleviate some of the impact. But as you can see, when you look at this, again, roughly $1.74 in 2020. And the good news is it drops to $1.40, but here we're filling in that $1.40 of base with new debt that would be taken out in 2020. So in 21, it would hit the levy. And we will see a slight increase from the $1.74 in 23-24. I'm looking at the fourth column from the right where it says total tax rate for debt service. And then we do see a pretty significant spike in 25 because of that $6.15 million issue coming online. So we do see that. Now, if you get grant money or if you get money that could reduce the amount of debt being taken out, other sources of funds at all, that certainly will help alleviate some of that impact. But again, what we're trying to boil this down to make it understandable for everybody and meaningful for all of you is what the actual impact is. And so we show that on this page, the actual impact of both of those issues. If you just looked at the 2020 issue alone, there's very little impact. It's really the 24 issue and the size of that issue that drives up that tax rate. Otherwise, we would see that tax rate stay pretty level or dropping a little bit from where you have been. On the last page of this document, one of the concerns that we wanted to touch on was, if you go back up, Judy, is it on that?
I got it, Chad. I'm gonna go back.
There we go. There we go, right there. Thank you. Got it. All right. One of the concerns of any municipality is to make sure you have borrowing capacity. And what that is, every municipality in the state of Wisconsin can borrow up to 5% of their equalized value, up to 5%. So it's the same calculation for the city of Milwaukee as it is for the city of Pittsville. 5% of your total valuation is what you can borrow for general obligation debt. So your capacity in 2020 is about a little over $20 million, $20,595,000 of, let's say roughly $21 million of borrowing capacity. Your outstanding debt in 2020 is about $8.1 million, meaning you've used 40% of your borrowing capacity. Now you're paying that off over time and you're growing a little bit. That combination increases that debt capacity number, but then you're taking on this new debt. So if you look at the orange column, that's the combined existing and the proposed 20 and 24. And if you look at the third column from the right where it says percent of limit, that's what percent of your borrowing capacity have you used or will be using when you take on these projects. You'll be at 69% at the peak in 2024 when you take on that large capital project. But again, it drops off pretty rapidly after that. But that's that peak year that you see because you've taken on that large, we're showing you taking on that large project in 24. We would prefer to always to make sure, I don't know if you have a separate policy, but we'd like to see you stay at least retain 25% of your borrowing capacity at all times. You're bumping up against it when you do take that on. Now, if you get better growth, better than expected growth, that helps that number. And if you decide to pay down some debt earlier, that helps that number as well. Or again, if the 24 issue shrinks in size because of grant funding or whatever, that would help that number as well. But at 70%, you're a little bit on the high side, but it's still manageable because you are paying down the debt pretty rapidly.
Right, and I think another point of that is you can see that we are probably at our max there in 2024, but you can see those numbers begin to drop. So you're not leaving the city without the ability to bond in the future. You never want to
Right.
see those rates hitting 70 year after year after year and crippling your city and not allowing you to move forward in the future with any infrastructure.
So with that, that's kind of the more formal presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer questions that of the analysis that we've run, kind of what's happening in the marketplace, anything that comes to mind.
I think the only other thing I want to talk about, Phil, is that the roof at City Hall is the one that Phil is talking about that I believe a bond council came back and said that that is not fundable through the bonding process. So what I'm going to look at is, so we're going to drop the dollar amount on the actual bond, and I'm going to look at going to the state trust fund loan to meet that gap.
Right.
So we're going to look at scheduling our, rescheduling our payments so that that fits in the same way that this current schedule does. So that, and we'll pay that over in a shorter period of time than we would pay over the 20-year bonding. So I'll be bringing that to, but now I won't bond for that till next year.
Right. Yeah, it just to add to that, it's not that it's an illegal project or anything like that. Wisconsin has a few quirks in their state statutes. One of the quirks for many, many years, well, since I've been working in this business, is that if you're going to fund a city hall or make improvements to city hall, then you can't do it as part of a bond issue without going to referendum. Now, in purpose, it makes some sense, right? If you're going to build a brand new city hall, you know, they're saying you got to take it to the voters. That makes sense to me. I don't have a problem with that at all. Repairing a roof on city hall is a whole different game on an existing city hall, but it's just one of those kind of quirks in the state statutes. So we've had to pull it out of here.
Okay, very good. So now we need a motion to authorize the bonding for the 2.5 million. Is that correct, Judy?
Yes.
That's what we're looking
Mhm.
for. So there's a motion to proceed. Motion. David makes the motion. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Mark seconds it. Nope.
Okay.
Nope, it has to be somebody else. So Morak, O'Connell, Barrington, Dorsey, or Fache.
No second.
John seconds it. Any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Very good.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your evening, and we'll talk again on Tuesday.
Sounds great. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you,
Great.
Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
All right, next, we're up to item number 5, approve updated purchasing policy.
Okay, so as part of us receiving the grant for the Newton Blackmore Trail, there's a number of policy changes, and I know Chad had brought a number of those to Park and Rec, I believe, Park and Rec Department. And this one made more sense coming to finance. So it's our current purchasing policy. I did make a change. It said that we had to sign for anything over $50. So I changed that to 100. That's currently our policy today. But then there's an addition of G and H. So they're kind of highlighted in your packet, but you can't see them really well. But those two needed to be added in order for this to comply with the verbiage needed to receive those funds for the Newton Blackmore Trail.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve updated purchasing policy.
I'll make a
John
motion.
makes the motion.
I'll second it.
David seconds. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Motion approved. All right, next, the resolution for the 2023.
Okay,
bonding.
so we talked about these when we went through the projects that we were going to, in the capital projects meeting, when we talked about the projects we were going to include in the bonding. There was 2 resolutions that I had talked about. And both of them are for the same purpose. So it's allowing the city to expense prior to receiving the bonding. So that way, when Chad and I talked today, he's going to go ahead and start working on the roofing projects. And that way, if we don't actually have the money in the bank prior to him signing a contract, this allows us to push that money against the bonding once we receive it. So there's 2 resolutions in a row. The first one is for the 2023 bonding, actually, when we're talking about our downtown project, and we actually already have expensed for this one. And Oshkosh Street. So that's why that bonding looks so large today. Hopefully we can see, that's the $6 million that Phil was talking about. But hopefully we can see some reduction and receive some grants prior to then, so we can keep our tax levy actually at a more steady rate than seeing it spike in the way that it did. I'm not going to look to increase that levy in the way that it appears today. So we're going to see what we can do to bring that dollar amount down in between here. But this one authorizes for that 2020 bonding. Or 2023 bonding.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution for the 2023? David makes a motion. Is there a second?
That was
And
Mike.
Mike,
I'll second it.
David seconds. Mike
Yep.
made the motion, David seconds. Okay.
Okay, and then the second one
Any,
is.
excuse me,
I'm
any
sorry.
changes?
We got to vote.
Yep,
Not
you're
all in
right.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Sorry about that.
All right, then the next item, resolution for the 2020 bonding.
So this is for the current one. So we
Alright.
can go ahead and get started on those roof projects.
Is there a motion to go proceed with the 2020 bonding spending?
Motion.
And David makes the motions. Is there a second?
Second.
Mike seconds.
Somebody else getting the minutes.
All right. Any changes, corrections, questions?
Judy, do you, on the actual formal wording of the resolution here, with what Phil mentioned on part of the roof, does that need to be changed on this?
So
Would be
we're,
first paragraph in bold.
we will be doing roof replacements. We just can't do the one on City Hall. So we can do the fire department, we can do the police
Police
department, but it's just City Hall that can't.
Okay.
So why, yeah, like
So
he
he
said,
was-
who knows? Yeah.
Like
So
he
we'll
was
leave
throwing-
that in there. We also specifically mentioned the Newton Blackmore Trail extension because they're looking for the city to have some skin in the game and to know that we're going to pay that other portion. So Chad and I visited about it, and that's why that one's specifically listed
Yep.
in there. So,
Good call. Okay, thanks.
Good question. Any other questions?
thank you.
Not all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we're up to finance director reports.
All right, so we'll start with the revenues. To date, we've received about 66% in our tax revenues. We're fortunate that during this time that the county does make the city whole and the end of August. So we will see 100% of our tax revenue. I'm going to move this over a little bit. Sorry about that. We will see 100% of our tax revenue at the next finance meeting. So we'll be whole with our property tax revenue at that time. Tax equivalents will come in later, the largest one being the utility. And we usually see that in about November. So at this point, I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Even public charges for services, I realize is going to take some kind of a hit here, of course, because of COVID shutdowns, but you can still see we're at about 44%, and I think that's pretty good for everything that has happened in all of those classes that have been canceled. So nothing too exciting going on. Does anyone have any questions on the
Judy,
revenue side?
I read something today about the state, even because of all the COVID problems, because it's a biennial budget, next year is not gonna be affected hardly at all. In fact, you had record tax collections.
Yep.
But
Saw
then you
that.
had to put half of that in the rainy day fund.
Yep.
By law. So apparently, I would say the next year we could plan, you're planning budgets for next year, assume the same amount of state aids.
Right, so.
But come to 22,
Mhm.
that's when it'll be affected.
And you're exactly in my same thought process. I
Okay.
did see that come through from the league that indicated the state had collected more, but like you said, half of that increase in tax revenue had to go in a rainy day fund, which is great. I'm glad to see that they're doing that because I am more worried about 2022. Now, whether shared revenue, I would anticipate them to keep it steady, but there is always a way for them to decrease it
Well-
if they want to. But yes, I'm going to go into 2021 as if our city is going to be back open as far as revenues are concerned and that we're going to receive full funding. Now, eventually here, I will receive an estimate from the state. So
We
in the
will.
next couple
Oh,
of
okay.
weeks, I should receive my shared revenue estimate. So once I receive that, then I should know for sure exactly what the city is going to see in shared revenue.
Okay.
So. Good point, Fred. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, then we'll move to the expenditure side. At this point, our biggest concern moving forward is just the two overages within our current budget. Again, I think I pointed this out last week. The city administrator, which is 26, and then legal counsel, which is about 103,000 over budget at this point. Where that will lie at the end of the fiscal year, we will see when we get there. But at this point, we're, between the two, almost $130,000 over budget. So if you look at the insurance side of it too, that one's high, but the only reason for that is because we pay all of our insurance at the beginning of the year. So you'll see that level out over
Do you even
time.
have to pay the medical insurance at the beginning of the year?
We pay medical insurance, health insurance, 1 month in advance. So
Oh,
that's
okay. Yeah,
paid
so I figured,
monthly.
yeah.
Because that way, if people come and go off the policy, then we get credits and
But your fire and casualty has to be all upfront.
correct. Yes. That's about all I have to point out, and that's why you'll see general government, those two categories that are over, you'll see general government at almost 73%, when more normal would be in the 50s, 58%. Debt service, we pay most of our debt service in the beginning of the year. That's why that one's up, and it will not go over by the end of the year. It's just that we have less payments at the end of the year versus the beginning of the year. Anyone have any questions on any of those? The one that I look at a lot here is this equipment maintenance. One of the things we started noticing when we were pushing off purchasing of equipment is that we were seeing equipment maintenance, which we have budgeted about $130,000 a year for a very long time. And there was a point where we were pushing things off, and we were watching that equipment maintenance just skyrocket. And now that we're into a more of a routine of changing our fleet over more rapidly, we're starting to see that come into more normal percentages. You can see we're at 47% in July. 50% is about average. So we're doing a good job maintaining and replacing. That's what that shows me. I shouldn't say that because then all of a sudden something will happen, right? But does anybody have any questions on anything else in this? Any particular line item? Okay. And then we're off to assigned and unassigned fund balance. I had two updates to this one. The cable TV fund. They spent about $23,600. So you can see right here, I included that as the upgrades. I put upgrades / drone. So this is considered phase 1. Phase 2 is when they're going to come in and I believe do some upgrades within the council chambers here. So, but you can still see that fund is very healthy at $258,000. And otherwise, everything else is remain, the downtown facade, economic development. Chad gave me another update to this one, so there's another $4,000 out of this fund. So we're down to about $927 in this designated area, just so you know. And we might as well talk about it now. Chad's gonna put as a line item on the economic development meeting, and you guys are gonna talk about how to move forward with the facade program,
Okay.
now that we know where we're at financially. So it'll be a line item there.
Will you have a recommendation on that, Judy, then?
Let me think about it. I know I thought about that too when I looked at this, and then I thought, let me just think about that. Let me just think about what we should do. Part of me doesn't want to, do, God, I don't have to, I just so, let's just think about that.
I was
Let's,
just, and how long have we had the facade improvement program? It's only been around, what, 4 or 5
I
years?
bet you 6 years, 10
6
years,
years.
something like that. I'll take a look at the history within that account.
Okay.
And then I'll let you know. But yeah, I'd really like to put some thought, some thought into that.
Mhm.
What should we do from here? It'd be interesting even to look at the history and look at who has received those dollars. I mean, a report on that. Maybe if you want me to do a report on the facade program over the years, the history of it, and then we can talk about, where should we go
Yeah.
from here?
That would be good. So the committee has to really, like you say, take a hard look at it. I think, and say, is it worth
Yep.
going forward? So
It's been a great program. You can see a lot of, nice, nice facades downtown that look, people, the business owners have been attracted to the facade program, let's put it that way. And they've been willing to put their dollars in as a match to it. So, and it seems to have picked up at first for a while here in the beginning of the year, but it does that. You'll get a whole bunch of people because, probably word of mouth. And then it seemed to not have a lot of interest for a while. And then all of a sudden it took off again. So I think just taking a look at that history and how, who's taken advantage of it, and not advantage of it, who has utilized those dollars, and the improvements in the downtown. So just a
That's-
thought process on
That's
that.
for the downtown, correct?
Yep. So I think it's a good idea just to put some thought into that, because I think we just visited about it in the last couple of days, and we're like, oh, let's talk about that economic development, make more sense, and then we have some time to think about where we want to go from here. So. Nothing else has changed within the designated funds or the unassigned fund balance at this time. Anyone have any questions on any designated funds, unassigned funds? Okay, then we have the wheel tax. We added, would have been June into here. So we're at 66,000. You can see the High Street crossing has started. And so we'll probably see more expenditures, I would expect, in next year or next month versus this month, but not a lot of change in there either. Anyone have any questions on that? And then the wastewater treatment plant bonding, so they have about $434,000 left in their bonding. And that project I would assume is going to be wrapping up here shortly or
It's
before the
pretty
end of the
close.
year.
It's just that coating issue that
Yeah,
we got
that
going on, but that's
paint
gonna be a
issue.
warranty thing, not a expense.
That's what I figured. That kind of put a halt on that for a while till we get that figured out. So those are the financials. And then all the detail of the digester upgrade. Any questions? Any other questions?
Maybe Jeremy Blisle talked to me last week about replacing the lighting again. He said about 8 years ago, we did a lighting project.
Yep.
And that had like a 10-year life before
yep.
we should be thinking about replacing it. He said there's like 50% savings, so the payback would be a couple of years if we get into something like that. I don't know if we've given any thought to going ahead with the lighting project.
Jeremy's approached me, and we kind of just generally same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
just kind of thought, how we're gonna go. Just with everything going on, I haven't been able to really
Okay.
put a lot of, detailed thought into that, but I think it's, we haven't seen the current lighting that we have installed right now. We haven't seen a lot of those bulbs start going dead yet to replace, so
yeah.
we're still getting that life out of our last round of improvements. So I think once you start seeing those bulbs start going out, then okay, now's the time where we've gotten the life out of that upgrade. We got to start working on that. But other than that, I haven't had time to really
Okay.
look into that any further.
And I agree. Then another thing is that we did take out a loan from WPPI for that process, and I believe we're still paying on that. I know it's close to being paid off, and I'm not exactly sure where we're at with it. So we would definitely want to hold off until we were finished with what we currently had done, and then move forward from there. But we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yep, because
I'll
when
look at
he
that.
asked me that, we had that conversation right
Yep.
after that. We were still paying it off. So yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, any questions could be directed to us too. The utilities has a representative from WPPI. Lisa is our energy representative. She works with Jeremy, so she would have available interest in showing what type of money is available for grants and such things for the city to do any of those projects. We work directly with the festival and everybody else to apply those grants. And Lisa does that. She does that for the utilities. So anything, you can reach out to us and we can
Great.
have Lisa comment on any of those issues too, Jeremy, also.
Perfect.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Songs, talking about Jeremy also mentioned that street poles and lights for North Water Street. Apparently we could go to Green Bay to look, they have a store, something set up there. We can look at options. Where you start thinking about things like where we want to hang flags, banners, et cetera. And so the posts, what decorative
Yeah.
posts.
There's a significant cost. I could show you guys some comparisons on that also. Those ornamental lights are extremely, they're aesthetically beautiful. And a lot of people go towards that shorter light fixture because of that. But you have to understand the cost is astronomical because then you have to have twice as many fixtures. So with twice as many fixtures, makes that number extremely, and then it also limits you guys from doing banners and flags and flower pots. So we'll have to work kind of intricately into those prices. I can get all those prices for you guys.
Yeah.
We already have the fixtures purchased. The LED project, we went ahead and purchased all those fixtures. So the LED lights are already, we can use those. So that would curb that cost. I think those fixtures are probably, just a rough estimate, probably $15,000 we already bid off because we're gonna change those downtown lights out anyways. We just decided to go forward with that. So we have those fixtures available. It'll be the, what the city decides to go with is, I know we've engineered that a couple times already. And I do know that that cost is quite substantial when you look at the number of fixtures. I mean, even easily if you have to do a foundation and you have to double that amount, you don't get the available light from a shorter fixture. So the higher gooseneck gives you guys the capabilities to put your flags up, to do your flower pots and that kind of thing. So that'll just have to be discussed and that's your guys' decision. But that's going to reflect those costs. So that number can vary greatly by that.
And didn't you bring up something before too about the shorter fixtures being a problem for drivers, the lighting?
Yeah,
At night?
Yep. When you go through town, like if you drive through Clintonville, those fixtures are beautiful, but we've had a lot of complaints on people saying that when they have those ornamental fixtures that are lower, the light is at the same level as the eye. So like in Clintonville, when you come down that hill, all those lights reflect right into your face. So it's more difficult to see than that gooseneck, which directs the light directly down. So that's something that, we can obviously, if we can see it, you guys could better make a determination of what you like. So, maybe pictures would reflect that too. Because I know those, I mean, we've got complaints over just our LED lights. I mean, Chad knows that we get customers that, say residents, hey, this light is so bright, I can't even have a fire in my backyard. These new LEDs are extremely bright. So we do have a couple different sizes. We have been downsizing. We do have shields we can apply. So that's something to take into consideration too, that with new LED technology, I don't know if we can direct that ornamental fixture, that light goes like this. Aesthetically, it looks nice, but it may not be functional for us. But that's something you guys will have to look into and make a determination of what you want.
All right, enough discussion on that. Item number 9, set the date for the 2021 budget hearing. Suggestion, the committee of the whole Thursday would be October 15th. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yep, my suggestion, Thursday, October 15th at 4:30.
Does that work for everybody?
And the reason I am picking that date and that week is because we have statutorily, we have to put all the hearing and notices in the paper. So Jackie and I work together and we work backwards. So when does it have to be adopted? And we do it at the council meeting in November, and then we have to work our way backwards into October. And she said she needs the information from me by Friday. So the last day that I could present would be Thursday. You have a council meeting on Tuesday, so I thought, well, I'll skip Wednesday and go to Thursday. I mean, I don't really have a preference. If Thursday doesn't work for anyone, I would go to Wednesday, but I picked Thursday.
So it sounds like it works for everyone. Very good. So it sounds like that'll be the date then, Judy.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, then item number 10, discussion action on the payroll tax deferral.
All right, so apparently this came up in a staff meeting and I wasn't there. So I did a lot of research in between. And what happened was our president signed a legislature, I'm not sure if that's the correct word for it, that allowed employers to decide if they were going to do a Social Security tax deferral for their employees. And what this does is between September 1st and December 31st, it would allow the employees to defer their payments into the next year. What I'm suggesting to do, and if you have any other questions about this, is that we not take part in this because we do have a choice. And a lot of employees have already approached me and said, if I have a choice, I don't want to do this. Because basically what you're going to do is you're going to take it from them and then you're going to take it back from them.
Then you gotta pay
So-
double next year.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we would take their deferral now and allow the deferral now, and then January, we would just double their deferral back
Yeah.
in. And I don't think it's good. So my recommendation would be that we not take part in.
Also, if an employee quits or,
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Another.
or retires, that's on us
Yeah,
to pay it.
yeah, no, it's,
Go to check advance.
yeah. I go like-
Need it that bad. Come on.
That doesn't make sense. Not a deferral.
Yes. Yeah.
That's for 20%.
You need to pay.
So if we decide not to do anything, Judy, we don't have to make any
We're not doing
motions.
Yes, I would like a motion to that effect so that
You
when
would like the
employees
motion
come to
that we
me, yep.
not do anything?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
David, make the motion that we'd not take advantage, and Tom would second that. Any further discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Motion carried. All right, we already had the finance director reports, or you have something
I
else?
passed those out because I did not include, I apologize, I did not include them in the packet. So I did pass them out if you want me to go through them, I can, or you can read them at your leisure and email me if you have any questions. You guys can pick.
Let's say if you give us a minute to
Okay,
look through it. Judy.
sounds great. I don't even have a
I think it was just, I read that legislation. It's foolishness.
Mhm.
6-month loan, and you pay me double back.
Basically.
I don't have any questions. Does anybody have any questions on Judy's report?
I make some errors. You sure of it?
Okay. Next, then, questions and answers. Anybody have anything?
That was it. We already talked about economic development.
Here.
Got nothing.
Okay, very good. Then I guess we need a motion to adjourn. Tom? Mike, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. We are adjourned.